For years, people have searched for the origin of the cryptid known as the Oklahoma octopus. For those who don't know, it's described as a freshwater octopus that drowns people in a number of man-made lakes. It's even been connected to a Native American legend of a tentacled man-eating monster in Oklahoma. The origin of the cryptid has been shrouded in mystery, as nobody could find a primary source about the creature. Some people even thought that it was made up entirely for the TV show Lost Tapes. After looking around, I was able to find a couple references to it from before the show aired. The earliest mention I could find was in 2004, but it seemed to be referencing another older source. Then while doing research for another video, I stumbled across a strange theory by author Mark A. Hall. He thought some freshwater octopus reports were actually sea scorpions that evolved to have tentacles. But what really caught my eye was him mentioning that lakes in Oklahoma had reports of a tentacled monster. This theory was published in the Wonders magazine all the way back in 1999, which means that there were even older reports of the octopus. I shared this information with Bamias, a fellow cryptozoology researcher. Now, when he was looking through the Wonders magazine, he tried to search for the word octopus and got no results. That's because, in that specific issue, Mark never actually calls it an octopus, and just says it had tentacles. So that gave Bamias an idea. What if he searched for the word tentacles instead of octopus? So he began searching for the words Oklahoma and tentacles, limiting the search to before 1999. Then, he got a hit. Russell Bates, an Oklahoman member of the Kiowa tribe who wrote for some TV shows, including Star Trek the Animated Series. He wrote a letter to the Info Journal, which studied various Fortean or unexplained phenomena. Here's what his letter, dated 1987, says. In the matter of other water creatures, I have only heard that the Caddo people once camped near small lakes that spring literally out of sandstone cliffs some 10 miles north of here. This would have had to been some 200 or more years ago. They would never let their women go for water without being accompanied by an armed man, because something lived in those lakes that would snare and drag a human deep underwater into caverns carved by the springs. What little I know of them is that they are about the size of a horse, have several arms or tentacles, and very tiny eyes. Oddly, they are reddish-brown, look leathery, and make no sound at all, much like some kind of snail or slug that has no shell. The only recent seemingly related matter is the fact that a small swimming resort was built on one of those lakes, calling itself Salyers Lake. It had paddle boats and canoes and cabins, and it also had the highest drowning rate of any such resort in all of Oklahoma. Several of the bodies were never recovered due to a maze of underwater sandstone caverns around the edges of the lake. Interestingly, all who drowned were whites because during the time it was open, the resort was, of course, whites only. It finally had to close in the 60s as it was deemed a public hazard by state authorities, and also because people just stopped going to a place where they were almost guaranteed to drown. Near the end of its run, it at last integrated its audience to try to survive. A few blacks dared to swim there, and sure enough, 2 were drowned. But none of the Indians in this region would have gone there, even if they were being paid. Most knew or were told of the things that live in the underwater caves that the Caddos knew and feared. Today, the ruins of the closed Salyers Lake and Camp still stand on the highway between Bingor and Kogar, just a few miles north of Anadarko. No one seems to either want to revive it or to redevelop it. Maybe somebody finally told them why the Indians avoid the place at all costs. Oklahoma at last began to receive man-made lakes in the late 1950s and through the 60s. Unexplainably high drowning rates exist at Tenkiller Lake, Lake Thunderbird, and Lake Ulaga. I know this as well. You could not get me to either fish or to go swimming in those lakes if you offered me gold. I fish in the Washita River alone in the daytime, but the only way I'll fish there at night is in a party of 4 or more, with Coleman lamps and with 22 pistols handy. Many of my friends hunt for deer and other game in this region, but you could not pay me to go out there in the woods here, day or night, even armed like a berserker Navy SEAL. My reasons are quite simple. I know it is there, in the woods, in the water, and elsewhere, and knowing is quite enough for me. So there it is, proof that the Oklahoma octopus wasn't made up for a TV show, and that the legend goes back decades. It even lists the exact man-made lakes, Thunderbird, Tenkiller, and Dulaga, that are said to be associated with the Oklahoma octopus, as well as some others that weren't included in later retellings of the story. The reddish-brown leathery skin and the connection with a native legend also line up with later descriptions of the Oklahoma octopus. As for the plausibility of the cryptid, while it's certainly cool, I would be surprised if it was more than just a story. Drownings are unfortunately a very common experience, even in bodies of water without dangerous animals. I think some stories of dangerous monsters living in lakes are the result of parents making up creatures to scare their children away from playing alone by the water. Or it could just be people who like telling scary stories. The letter doesn't even mention actual sightings of unknown creatures in the 3 man-made lakes, just speculates that there may be something in them causing the drownings. If you think about it, how would a new unknown species of large octopus get into a man-made body of water? The existence of a freshwater octopus is unlikely on its own. The biochemical composition of an octopus makes it very hard for the animal to adapt to fresh water. Tyler Greenfield found a story from 1982 of 2 boys who were fishing in an Oklahoman river when they pulled up an octopus. The octopus was already deceased, so it was probably from a private collection that someone put in the river. Other similar stories have happened around the United States. Mark Hall, the guy who kicked off this video, exposed a freshwater octopus hoax on the Kanawha River. But there are some interesting reports as well, including one from the Blackwater River in West Virginia. A group of school kids spotted multiple living octopuses in fresh water. They even captured 2 of them, to the astonishment of their principal. He pointed out that it was unlikely that someone could have transported them into their community due to the size of the octopuses. While the newspaper says that calls were made to marine life experts at a local college, there doesn't seem to be more info about the case. On a related note to the Oklahoma octopus, one of the 2 octopuses they captured was found in an artificial lake created by a dam. In 1959, a gray octopus-like animal was seen bobbing on the surface of a river in Kentucky. Strangely, around the same time, there were vague reports of a semi-aquatic 2-legged monster in the area. In Grafton, West Virginia, 4 boys found an octopus with 2-foot or 60-centimeter long tentacles. It was still alive when they pulled it out of the water. For whatever reason, they decided to give it to a local dog catcher. Imagine if they actually found a new species, and its fate was being used to bait someone's lost puppy. There's even a photograph of an octopus they found near the Ohio River in 1999. This time, the octopus was already deceased when it was found. A couple of marine life experts looked at the octopus, and they believed that it was an already discovered species. One said it looked like Octopus phylosis, a species that was sometimes sold in the Haitian aquarium market. This incident seems like a pretty clear-cut case of someone releasing a known species of octopus into the water. One interesting thing Bamias pointed out is that the story of the Oklahoma octopus seems somewhat similar to an old legend of a skookum he read about. This skookum was described as a large tentacled monster. Someone who saw it in Willamette Valley, Oregon, described it as having an orange air sac-like body. The author speculated that it could be some type of freshwater cephalopod, or maybe even a mollusk. Unfortunately, this is about all we could find on the story, and the website we found it on doesn't list a source. What do you think about the legend of the Oklahoma octopus, and other stories of freshwater octopus reports? Leave your thoughts down below. I might make a video discussing other freshwater reports of saltwater-only animals in the future. Special shoutout to Bamias who helped me make this video, as well as Tyler Greenfield and J.A. Hernandez. Also, a huge shoutout to my Patreons Jason Cook, Johnny Tsunami, Wild World, Timothy, Lenarts, John R., and Philip Jones. If you'd like to support my channel, a link to my Patreon will be in the description below. If you'd like to see more cryptid videos, a link to a playlist of them will be below as well. Liking and subscribing would also be a huge help. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. And remember, if you're going to go swimming, bring a friend with.